Okay. Dr. Bones, welcome back. For people who haven't experienced Stephen's wisdom before, we've done this a number of times, but it's the first time we're doing it on YouTube now, on my podcast. But Stephen is how would I term it? Intuitive coach and shamanic practitioner? What do you call yourself these days?
Okay, so this was named by Spirit, by the way, not by me. A multidimensional therapist is what they named me.
Whoa. There you go. I love that. And you got the drums in the background as well, which I love. Just incredible artwork.
Yeah.
But Stephen reached out to me, and this could be a deep one. This could be a lot deeper than we usually go on this podcast. But Stephen reached out to me and said he wanted to talk about life after death. And I thought, I love that because this opens up so much. And it's very different to what I usually talk about, in terms of leading with purpose, creating work that aligns with purpose. We can go really deep into what human purpose is and our reason for being here. And we can take it in a number of different directions. But, over to you first, Dr. Bones. What inspired you to kind of want to talk about this today? Because we've probably both had our own experiences where we've gone deep into this subject. We could talk about actual direct experience of what perhaps happens when you experience an ego death. But over to you first. Where would you like to kick this off?
Yeah, interesting. Well, I've just finished reading Gregg Braden's new book called Pure Human. And the essence of the book is he's frightened of AI being implanted into people. So if you want to read about that, of his fears and warning humanity against it, is quite interesting. But the essence of when he opens up the book is he points to that science is now 99.99% certain, i.e. the evidence is that humans arrived here intentionally. And without going into the deep science, because I don't understand it fully, but I've got the gist of it in a nutshell, is 200,000 years ago-ish, whenever we landed here, we had chromosome 1 and chromosome 2. And somewhere along the way, within a short space of time, like 10,000 years or so, when the next took DNA from humans at that time, those two chromosomes, 1 and 2, had fused to make chromosome A. And my understanding and interpretation of what he's saying there is that it's scientifically impossible for that to happen. It's not happened with any other species. So therefore, if it's scientifically impossible for it to happen, that we know of, i.e. physics, quantum physics, however you want to go down that road, genome, because that's what we're talking about, genes being fused together. What the science has now proved is that must have happened with an outside intelligence or a higher intelligence. So if that's the case, they did that on purpose. So if they did it on purpose, that was to put us here intentionally with that fusion. And if that was put here intentionally, that means we are here intentionally. And what he goes on to talk about as through the book is, if we've got that intention, what is it? And just off-piste a little bit of the subject, just to give that some substance around it. He also talks about humans awakening, which a lot of people hear of, I've had an awakening. But what he adds on the end of that is awakening to our divine power. So when people say it's an awakening, they're missing off to our divine power. Right. Because if humans arrived here intentionally, and we've got an intentional purpose, and also some of your viewers may not know that the cranial neurons in the brain, it's now scientifically proven that there are neurons on the heart. So if there are neurons on the brain that are, and we rewire them and make them grow with doing meditation work, etc., that means as we do spiritual work through the heart space, that those neurons grow again, which is more evidence that there's a connection with the heart to something, whatever you want to call that.
Right.
So that sort of threw me into this subject of near-death experiences, or what is there beyond.
Yes.
And you and I have both had experiences around that. And I suppose the big one that most people remember is Wayne Dyer encouraging Anita Moorjani to write her famous book of her near-death experience. And Anita Moorjani goes into great detail because she had an amazing experience, and that's probably the most famous one. And you know what? I'd love to have a podcast or a conversation with somebody that has had a near-death experience to see what they experienced compared to what we experienced on medicine.
Yes. Well, this leads us on, because we can talk about this stuff all day, but when we talk about there's so much we can talk about here. I'd love to delve into that. Okay, so science is proven. Science is kind of catching up with spirituality, and now, oh yes, we have actually a purpose. We're not just here randomly on this rock in the middle of space, and this whole theory of evolution about how we evolved from apes, etc. I mean, that ultimately is a theory that can be disproven. So, what I want to get to is, it's up to us as individuals to have a direct experience of what might be there when we move beyond this dimension. And so you touched nicely onto plant medicine. For anyone who isn't aware, when we talk about medicine, we're talking about these plants that are that you can drink and have been done for thousands of years in the Amazon, for example. But you can have experiences with psilocybin, mushrooms, etc. Lots of these different plants out there that if you merge with, you can have an experience. So to me, they're like keys that can open up different dimensions for you. And I've had enough experiences with ayahuasca in particular in Central and South America and in the UK as well, where I've had that experience of ego death, where that aspect of you that basically you accumulate as you go through this lifetime, all these thoughts that go round and round and round, and traumas and experiences, and all of that seems to dissolve. And so there is no thought process, there is no changing emotions, and what you're left with is just this awareness, basically. And it's a hard thing to describe. And like I said, you have to really have a direct experience of that. Like you said, whether that's different for someone who's had an actual near-death experience whereby, you're clinically dead, and then I imagine that might be even deeper, when you've passed. And a lot of those people will say, I didn't want to come back. They'll say, like, oh, it was blissful, I didn't want to come back. My experience was drinking 2 cups of ayahuasca and then not realizing the power of this stuff. And, then the ego starts to dissolve. It's utterly terrifying for the ego because it doesn't want to die. It wants to hang on. Obviously, it thinks if I die, then there's nothing. But what we do realize when the ego passes away, my experience was like just infinite awareness, basically time dissolved. And so you're in this like infinite space. The ego initially is terrified. Once it lets go, once it surrenders, which is the great lesson of plant medicine, you're in this just incredibly powerful space. I actually forgot about my human life entirely, and it felt like I was there for infinity. And then all of a sudden, it was like had this recollection of, oh, I remember I used to be a human being at some point, and I drank this medicine, and that's how I got here. And slowly the ego started to reform again, and I came back to this reality. But it's never quite the same after you've had an experience like that. Once you've been blown out to infinity and you come back, it's like there's a realization of, okay, there's much more to me. There's much more to life than just this human experience of going to work, having relationships, food, water, which kind of dominates our consciousness so much as we go through the human life. And then I think it gives you a degree of respect and a bit of faith, I suppose, that when you do pass on from this life, that you don't just disappear and there is something else beyond that. But how about your experience, Stephen, when you've worked with the plants?
Yeah, I was listening with interest there. 2 things. I wouldn't advise anybody to do plant medicine without the right supervision. And we worked with shamans when we went into South America, and the ones we worked with knew what they're doing. And to be fair, I am hearing stories of 1 or 2 that are probably in it just for the money. So just be very careful
a lot of that.
if you do go down that road of what you're doing. But yes, my experience was very different to yours, and that's the beauty of these things. It did show me a higher power, and my ego had to step back. And this realm came in, which was multidimensional, and whatever was coming through me as a power, I was watching it, what it was doing, and it was mainly healing people. And it was it had got this energy had just got, because that's what it is basically, was looking round and working with the people through me as a facilitator, just healing. And it was quite, for me, it was fascinating to watch. It didn't get that fascinating when I purged on behalf of somebody that was being healed. That was quite a intense experience for a few minutes, because purging, when you start purge on medicine to start with anyway, that's okay. And I'd had my own purging when all this started. And everything
is basically being vomiting, for anyone who's not heard that term before.
So vomiting, But then when I was doing it on behalf of somebody else, because I was this energy was working with somebody and really getting me as a human to connect with their human, to allow them to step back for the healing to get on, I then purged for them. And it was interesting. The energy was taunting whatever was being purged, that there wasn't enough, because I remember saying, is that all you've got, after I purged a couple of times? And then really it came, and I honestly thought my feet were going to come out my mouth. It was that intense. And then a couple of minutes later, then the energy then began working with this person. And my ego was back here, if you want to call it that, watching all this that's going on, feeling the pain, obviously, but in awe of what I was seeing. It was like I would open my eyes, and the human was connecting with the human on this person. I'd close my eyes, and I was in with this energy and watching what it was doing, and it was taking me on this journey of how it was healing and what it was doing. And it was an absolutely amazing experience, and I respect that experience of what happened. But what it did do, interestingly enough, when I came back and I found my present spiritual teacher that I began working with, because I was led to her through that experience, because unbeknown to me, that opening had opened my gifts up of being able to get into an altered state of consciousness without medicine. And interestingly enough, I remember this energy saying to the shaman there that this being doesn't need medicine. And I wasn't quite sure what that was meaning. I now understand what it means. So that enables me to do past life healing and clearing, soul retrieval work with it, working with people's energy, with loving energies and spirits that work in people's energy. I'm the facilitator again, but they take me on the journey for me to facilitate that connection with the human and their soul and bringing everything back. And people get fantastic experiences through that work I do. I get a bit frustrated sometimes because a lot of people don't get how they can be helped, and all they have to do is sit there and I do the work, and this energy does the work. And I get a bit frustrated sometimes that but that's their choice, and that's humans' choice, and that's getting back to where we are as human beings. And you're quite right, just reverting back a little bit. Mainstream science, by the way, is not still embracing the science that has proved that we're here intentionally, and that Darwin's theory of evolution has more or less been blown out of the water, and they keep teaching it and there's lots of reasons why. But if people want to get into that space, go and have a look at Gregg Braden and have a look at what he's talking about. But what he also points to is that divine connection. So if our intention here is to connect to our divinity, which is what we did essentially, what we've just described, each of our own experience, is we've connected to our divinity and a much higher power than what we can imagine we are connected to. And I think people that have near-death experiences, I mean, Anita Moorjani is an amazing being, because, again, people talk about our divinity, and the human body is capable of healing itself. And we know it is. If we cut our finger, okay, if we cut it too deep, we might go to the hospital and they'll sew it up, but it heals on its own. If you break a limb and you leave it, it'll still heal on its own. You might be limping, but we go to the doctors or the hospital to get it reset or whatever they need to do to it so that we don't get an abnormality through that fusion and the body healing. But Anita's body had completely shut down, if people aren't aware of that. It had slowly shut down and all the major organs had shut down. Everything had gone, and the doctors could not fathom out how she came back and how those organs regenerated. Now, the science is that the theory of what a lot of the science is at the minute, the quantum physics, etc., is that our body is very capable of doing that. It's just that we're conditioned that it's going to degenerate. So I think people that have had that near-death experience have seen very firsthand, as we have, and had that experience that there is something far greater. That my interesting question, and it's one that you might give it, and I made a quick note of it while you were talking there, is I wonder if people that have an NDA, it's not quite their time yet. And they've had the experience, number one, it could be that there's some lesson or an opportunity that they need to see to push them further forward in this physical life. Or maybe it's an accident and it wasn't meant to happen and it wasn't their time, and they go back and they sort of see into this near death, and then they're sent back, if you like, because it's not their time. It's fascinating.
It is, and we can only really ponder on that kind of stuff because, like you said, the level. What I'm always in awe of when I go and work with plant medicine is just what I understand. The only thing I understand when I work with plant medicine, really, and I'm in those kind of dimensions, is how little I understand. I'm just like, because the way I describe it to people is like, if they can actually measure this, actually, but I'm not sure what the numbers are. But in this kind of 3D reality, this physical reality, we're kind of downloading a certain amount of information for our senses. And I don't know, but the comparison might be if we're downloading 10 megabytes a second or whatever it is. But when you go into those other dimensions beyond the physical, you're downloading gigabytes and gigabytes every second. So the only choice you've got basically is surrender. You can't understand it. You can't analyze it. And if you do try and fight it or understand it or struggle with it, then it just gets really, really difficult, really difficult. So the only way through it is just to surrender, give up with the idea of trying to understand anything or control it in any way, and just literally, the way I do it is just kind of feel through what's happening, come back to the breath, relax the body as much as possible. Just literally just let this energy, whatever it is, this consciousness, do whatever it wants to do to me and show me whatever it wants to show me, which I think is really the great lesson of the medicine. But what is shown to me quite often is where the medicine kind of talks to you, the plants talk to you. And it might sound a really far out thing to a lot of people, but it does. You can have a conversation with it or just listen to it. And it's always showing to me like this is the purpose really of life is that you are God, if you want to call it that, or whatever word you want to use, awareness or universe, whatever it is, attempting to understand, create a kind of separate version of itself, a kind of smaller version of itself, and looking back on itself. So you are God looking back on yourself, basically. You shrunk yourself down into this tiny little fraction of the universe, and to give yourself a perspective from looking back on itself. So in the same way that I am God looking back on myself, Stephen, you are, and the person listening to this, whoever you are God as well. But it's a slow kind of that's where the term self-realization comes from. The journey of life is basically you coming back over and over again to have different perspectives on yourself and understanding yourself more and more and more. And that's what we're all doing, basically. So to me, it's very clear what the purpose is. It's basically just this self-realization. It is God attempting to experience itself in lots of different ways, lots of different fragments. And the plant medicines in particular can really accelerate that evolution, the evolution of your consciousness, if you like, which when you get down to it, what is the only thing that we take from this life to the next. It's just the evolution of our consciousness. You can't take anything else. You don't take your relationships or your money or your job or your awards or your followers or your successes. You leave all that behind, which is the difficult bit. You've got to leave all that behind because that's all accumulated in this lifetime. Whatever you've accumulated in this lifetime, you've got to leave behind. And again, you go back to the board is wiped clean. You come in as you go out as you came into life, which is this blank slate. And you've got to leave all that stuff behind, and you've got to go back to a blank slate again, which is very difficult because we've got all these attachments. But the feeling I have is that you have to let go of all those attachments when you die. And if you look at the Tibetan Book of the Dead, for example, that the monks are basically prepare this whole lifetime is for that moment when they have to let go of the body, let go of all the attachments, so that you can actually go to the next life in a kind of optimal state, which is just, because the feeling that you have when you transition basically echoes for eternity then. So if you go from a place of attachment, regret, sadness and happiness, you basically then the next life will be, you will attract that in the next life. So you have to be prepared to just let go completely and then, let the universe or God put you wherever you need to go next, basically. So if this is we're going to talk about purpose. If you understand that ultimately, when we strip life back to its core essence, your reason for being here is to self-realize, to understand that you are God, you are the infinite, basically. That's really important because for a lot of people, they attach their purpose to some kind of arbitrary result. It's like, oh, my purpose is to help this many people. Yeah, build a business, reach this monetary target, and of course, if your purpose is outside of you, then you're always going to suffer. What happens when you reach that target? Oh, my purpose is to create $1 million business. What happens if you reach that? So while you're building it, you don't feel enough. You feel like your purpose is outside of you. If you do reach it, then what? You've got no purpose. So this is the problem. It's great to have goals and targets in life. This is what I call outer purpose, your mission. Hopefully it's a positive mission where you want to serve others, in some way. But if you just tie it to the work you're doing, the actions that you're taking, you're kind of missing the bigger picture here. And so you need to have, for me, that's that mixture of the outer purpose, the doing, with the inner purpose, which is the being, healing yourself, realigning yourself, doing that inner work of raising awareness. And if you combine the two, it's very powerful, because if you're just focused on an outer purpose, the tendency is that you can get overwhelmed, you can get stressed, burnt out, etc., because you're not also working on your inner purpose. So it's always, for me, a combination of the doing, the creating, the work you're doing, and then the being, letting all that go and just surrender to what is. Because that, for me, is like when I recharge myself, when I connect to source, connect to who I really am. It's like this recharging that goes on, filling up a battery, and then I'm able to take action from an aligned place. Whereas what I see with a lot of entrepreneurs, senior professionals, is they're constantly taking action from a place of feeling under-resourced and overwhelmed. And of course, that energy just perpetuates itself. You're like a hamster on a wheel going round and round and round and round, the same results over and over again. This is why I'm always saying to people, first of all, get clear on that inner purpose, why you're really here. And then when you're in a place where you're fit for service, you've actually healed yourself to a degree, because you can never complete that journey, then go out and serve others. But make sure that you first created that resource within yourself. Otherwise, you can do a lot more harm than good, I think, if you just go out and try and save the world from a place of lack.
Yes, I'm totally agreeing with you. And just to quantify, when I came back from Colombia, by the way, I smiled when you said your ego then gradually embodied. So did mine.
Yeah.
And my ego, by the time I met my present spiritual mentor, my ego was in full swing. And so she had to sort of give that a bit of a knocking around for me to understand how to let go of that. And that took me on another journey. But yes, you're absolutely right. We come in, if we are here intentionally, so if we run with that jacket on, that we're here intentionally, and so therefore we've got an intention purpose of what we're here for. And you're quite right. What tends to happen, though, is we can, for instance, what the journey's taken me is doing a course on addictions, being helping and supporting people in recovery. So I'm talking to quite a few people in recovery, and the interesting thing, what I'm picking up and gleaning, is that most people go out and they're drinking and eating, and I'm not knocking any of that. That's great. I used to do all that sort of stuff. But what I'm sort of looking at now is we do it because, and I certainly did, because there was a gap. There was something not fulfilled. And you're quite right. I was building the business, my last business previous to this one, that was pretty successful. We got to 3+ million turnover, 20 staff, 5 lorries, warehouses, you name it, we were doing it. And we lost that more or less overnight, and not due to anything I per se did wrong. It was just that the markets changed and there was nothing I could do to do anything about that. Interesting. I had to surrender to that journey. So along that way, though, I remember on that journey, I was very driven on that hamster wheel, as you say. And what happens is you set off and you're like, probably in your 30s when you get into really going for it. Perhaps you've mortgaged your house up like I did, and we put every bean we got into the business, and we were really going at it. And I was working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. And even on Sunday, you're not switching off because you're full of energy thinking, where am I going to get this from? And I'll build that and I'll attach that on. And you're really going. And that is actually your ego driving on that hamster wheel. And you know what happens, and this was my experience, and I have seen it before in a lot of others as well, as you go around that hamster wheel, you get more and more physically tired, because you're quite right, you're not doing it from the perspective of inside, you're doing it from the outside. So why was I driven? And the whole reason is I had to make money. Why did I have to make money? Apart from this, my ego wanted a big house and a big car and lots of holidays. It was for security, for safety. I thought that if I got lots of money, I would feel secure and safe. And I'm not knocking having lots of money, and it does make you feel secure and safe. But it's not to drive for that reason and to build a business for that reason is where the misalignment comes. And when I look back now, if I'd had built the business from an aligned place, I would be delivering more service to my customers. I would have been more aligned with what do they want, what do they need, and how can I serve them and develop better things for them. And I wanted to do that, but you're so in this conditioning that you've got to drive. And what I did notice there with that, there was still something missing. It was like eating a big meal and still feeling hungry. And I kept going, and a couple of times the rug had been pulled from under me along the way, but I'd managed to pick myself up and keep going forward. And every time I did that, it was like a real push, and then the bar sort of moved and I moved with the bar and things got better. But you know, when I actually got to that point you described, and we've all got different points. Bill Gates, I don't know how many billions he's got to make to get to that point, but mine wasn't that much. It was a very comfortable lifestyle, more than most income-wise, and working towards keep building and keep piling more money into the company in terms of allowing the pot to build. And when I got there, I was bored. I literally remember that I was going into work, everything was flowing. We'd got a good range of customers on board because I'd built and developed the business. We were making good profit. At the end of the month, I did management figures, and we were making tens of thousands of pounds profit every month. I'm not talking revenue, I'm talking net profit every month. So we were 150,000+ a year net profit. And when I was in that space, which is what I was trying to get to, I look back now and I was still empty. And that was when I thought, I'll go out for expensive meals and drink expensive wine, and I'll keep drinking as much wine as I can too, and that made me for a short time feel a bit better. And then as time kept going on, there was still this, there's something not right. And then, of course, the rug got pulled out from under me big style because I knew there was something not right. So, in other words, the external was making the money, the external was the income, but the connection to the divine, if you want to use that terminology, or the connection to the higher power, knew I wanted to try and find out what that gap was. So really, I was asking for it because there was a gap there and I was recognizing it. Doesn't feel, I wasn't saying it out loud, but I knew I could feel it. When I felt it, of course, I'm saying what's wrong. So they really pulled the rug out from under me, and then I ended up down this path of what we're on now. And
this is where you're supposed to be. Yeah,
exactly. Yes. Yeah. And interesting.
But that's interesting because you hear it a lot with celebrities as well. Like Jim Carrey would say, you know, I wish everybody. I love his quote. He says, "I wish everybody could have what they want, so they can realize that that's not it. You know, you can have the fame, you can have the money, you can have the lavish lifestyle, but if you haven't got that connection to who you really are inside, it doesn't mean anything. You'll still feel hollow. So you have to have the two. Yeah,
yeah, and that's very much what I experienced, and I can see it a lot still in other people. I see hugely wealthy people that I know that have built a huge bank of investments up with using the money that the net profit that we're making, they're put into different investments, whereas I stuck mine into the same business, which was probably mistake number one. I ought to have, if I'd have been aligned, maybe I would have invested in other things outside. I invested in one or two other things outside, which we're reaping the benefits for now, income-wise and things, which I'm really grateful for and pleased it happened. Interesting, was it a coincidence? One never knows. But that was the way it went. But I see people, and there's two sort of things I notice. Some of them are, they're never going to want financially at all, but they're racked with shame and guilt. They don't admit it, but I can feel it. And you and I both know, because of the work we've done, you get sensitive to people's energy. Yeah. And you've only got to talk to them because we're into talking therapy as well as energetic therapy. And we know full well that they're out of line. Then you get the ones that just keep working, your Bill Gates of this world.
Addiction
just keep driving, you Zuckerberg of this world. And that's their choice. And I'm not knocking any of it. I'm just saying that that's still driving them. And then you get the ones that I notice are in the pub a lot because they can afford it. So to them, and some of them get to do it 4 and 5 nights a week. I've noticed that it builds and builds because the tolerance to what they're drinking and eating gets to where they don't get a buzz, so they do more of it, and they do more of it, and that's what
it doesn't move the stress away eventually. Like you can do it for a night, and then, like you say, you need more the next night. And this is the thing, because we see this a lot. But then what is the solution? And this is something that's really helped me. And I know the same for you, Stephen. It's like, all right, at the end of the day, when we're under-resourced, and we all experience it, if we're busy entrepreneurs or professionals, whatever it might be, there's a sense of feeling depleted. You know, some difficult emotions can come up in that space. And so the thing is like, oh, well, I'll numb it. I'll distract myself. I'll exercise. I'll drink. I'll eat. I'll watch Netflix. I'll go on social media, anything just to escape this feeling, basically. But the key, as I've found, is, you know, if you can actually go into that and just sit with the really uncomfortable feeling. And it's difficult to do, especially when you start out, because the mind will keep taking you out of it. But if you can start bringing awareness from the head into the body and start feeling through this stuff, and support is really important. Obviously, you know, we've done so much of this work. Every day I'll sit with my community and have that support so I can stay with this difficult emotions in my body. It actually becomes more of a pleasant experience. I don't know if you find the same, Steve, but if you sit with shame or guilt or stress, anxiety for long enough, and you find it in your body, where is that located in your body? And you just gently feel into it, just sit with it, with support, like I said, it can actually become like a really pleasurable experience. And so what's actually happening there is you're processing this energy. You're not trying to process it. You're not trying to make anything happen or understand it. You're just feeling into the energy. Mind will take you out. You come back to the feeling. Mind takes you out. You come back to the feeling. And with that support, you've got that So why is support important? Because you've almost got like a grounded template that your system can, template. Yeah, you've got another system that's grounded. So it's hard to find that when you're on your own. But if you've got someone who's holding the space, providing ground, your system will just template that. And so it's much easier to step into that place of regulation, self-regulation. It's co-regulation, as it's known. And if you do that at the end of the day, instead of trying to distract yourself, you're actually processing this energy, what we call energetic hygiene. You're processing this stuff each day so it can clear out your energetic system so it doesn't build up constantly and lead to some kind of big blowout, a burnout, or taking time off work, or whatever mental health problems, whatever it might be. So this has been absolutely so crucial for me to have a way of clearing this stuff rather than turning away and distracting myself from it. And I guess you'd say the same in your line of work, Stephen.
Yes, I mean, what we do is very similar. I use these drums behind me as one modality. That's why I've been named multidimensional. The drums have a sound energy and a frequency that comes through them that can help touch the energy for people to push it through for them. Then I drop into the soul retrieval work and working in energy again, or past life. And then we come to the stuff that you and I were taught, and that's what we use as another modality. So you're absolutely right. There's one thing I have noticed, and it's fair to say that what you're pointing to there, when you've gone through any type of healing, you begin to unhook from the mind, and you drop back down into the heart space somewhere, usually. And that is a very pleasant experience. And to me, that's where you've learned to connect to your divine. Maybe not full power, and maybe that if you look at it as a door, maybe it's just starting to open. I think if it opened fully, it would blow your physical body apart, and that's
you can have that experience with plant medicine, when you feel like being blown apart.
Yes. So it's amazing. If you work with somebody like us, we can help people get to that point in life where everything feels like ease and flow, and if they do get overwhelmed, there are tools that can help them with that overwhelm. And I do feel for people. I mean, I see people around quite a lot. There's one lad, and I know people judging. So he's got sort of tattoos up his neck, and he's not clean shaven. But you know what? He's a lovely lad. I can feel his energy, and he's got really kind heart in him. And he doesn't mean harm to anybody, but I know he gets lost. I know he'll get into a group of people where he feels he's got to fit in. And that's when the partying starts happening. And then of course, he's under the influence of something. And what happens is he loses himself. And that's what happens to a lot of us along the way. And we can do it unconsciously. I mean, mine was work, just evidently work. And that's how I was using my external. Some people use, as we know, they will use sport or extreme sports or just daily exercise. My eldest daughter, I try and guide her, but again, it's her choice if she doesn't want to go down that road and listen to what Dad's got to say. But some of her exercise routines I look at, and I can see she's attached to them. I sort of point them out, but that's up to her. So at the end of the day, we either, like you say, it can be depression, anxiety, not sleeping, stress, just feeling not right. Any of those things are the human experience. Once we begin, and this is the caveat, what people sometimes don't understand, and I certainly have got no understanding of it. When somebody said to me, a psychotherapist, many, many years ago, before I even started this work, while we were still on that hamster wheel, and I was really at the pinnacle of that, she said to me, because she knew a bit of my background, she said, of course, in your traumatic childhood, and I remember this voice in the head very clearly said, like really loud, the fucking hell's she talking about, traumatic childhood? you haven't had a traumatic childhood. What on earth is she talking about?
Mm.
And of course I had a traumatic childhood.
Yeah.
But it
We all
took me
do.
another 5 or 6 years for them to show me, by pulling the rug out from under me, this is the way you're going to go. And what I'm pointing to is we need to explore these channels if we want to evolve. And if we're here with an intent and a purpose of connecting with that divine, that what you're pointing to, that lovely, amazing space that where we can live in flow for most of our days, we have to explore what we're talking about now, that power, try and get to it and let go of the external. If people don't want to let go of the external and they choose that road, that's great and that's perfect. If people are getting curious, they've listened to this maybe, and they're getting curious, reach out to either of us, or just go down a rabbit hole, Google it, whatever you need to do to begin to get more curious about what that can do for you and how it can help you.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a case of most people have to hit rock bottom before they start that inner journey. I think almost life is designed like that. I feel like this life is designed specifically so that we forget ourselves, and then we go on a journey to remember who we are again. It seems to be designed that way, doesn't it?
Yeah, the rug sort of gets pulled, and I would advise anybody, get curious before that rug gets pulled, because trust me, it will get pulled. You might get ill, you might get cancer in your body, you might get to where you're just on that hamster wheel all the time until you get to your deathbed and you regret. And then that's why we talk about this subject of near death and the fascination of what is beyond. I think I can assure everybody, and I'm sure you can, and if you want validation, look at near-death experiences, read Anita Moorjani's book. Trust us, there is something huge out there, and we are here intentionally to connect with that. And Gregg Braden, for instance, if you follow him on YouTube or read his book, he goes into it as well. The evidence is now so clear that there is far more out there than what we perceive, that we need to get curious about it. And it's up to the individual. But I would strongly advise you can't before that rug gets pulled.
you can't push anyone. That's what I know. People wake up in their own time. But you touched on something interesting there before we finish, because you talked about the regrets that people have at the end of their lives. And this is a tangible bit of research done by Bronnie Ware, palliative health nurse who spent many years working with people at the end of their lives. And obviously then what I love about that is that at the end of this life, all the bullshit basically is thrown away, and you suddenly realize, you get clarity. I'm about to leave this life. All of a sudden you realize what the mistakes or the issues that you've had in your life and what was really important. And so here are the 5, and there's one in particular that I love. From the bottom, I wish I'd let myself be happier, which is interesting, which hints at the fact that there is a choice there. I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. That's the one I talk about all the time, because that basically is what that hints at, is that we've lived a life that has been dictated to us by society, by parents or teachers or whoever it might be. And we've been essentially out of alignment. We haven't been living in alignment with who we truly are. So there's been no inner alignment, basically. So we've been chasing what society has been telling us what we should chase: money, fame, relationships, or whatever it is, and we've suddenly realized at the end, that wasn't what I really wanted. So this is just to say, that changed my life when I heard that biggest regret. I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself, because this comes down at the core of purpose, basically. So again, if you, like Stephen said, if you're watching this and any of it's resonated, you still have a chance right now to avoid that. Most people get to the end of their lives with those regrets. And I think it's interesting because so many of them come down to, for me, most of them come down to, like you said, the work we do. The work we do, isn't in line with purpose. We work too hard. We don't stay in touch with our friends. I wish I'd let myself be happier. So, because most of our life is dominated by work. And if we're not doing it in a way that feels purposeful and we're not making space for that inner work, then this is where the majority of human beings end up on their deathbed. And it's such a shame, but I do think that we're waking up as a collective, and people are starting to explore this kind of work, purpose. Who really am I? There's been a big shift on the planet this in the last sort of 20 years, I think, and it's a really powerful time. And I think it's no surprise that we've come to Earth at this time, if you believe in reincarnation, because this is probably the most powerful time we've had in human history. Especially when you talk about AI. I mean, who knows what's going to happen with that? But that really is a distraction ultimately from the inner work of self-realization. Only you can do that. Only you can turn inward, start to focus on yourself, start turning inward, start healing yourself, feeding through this really difficult stuff, raising awareness for your conditioned mind. And like we said, there are plenty of tools out there, plenty of methods out there. Myself and Stephen can help you on the journey if you resonate. But anything else you'd like to add at the end, Stephen? Would you like to share your own website link or where people can find you?
You'll get me at stephenbones.com. That's Stephen with a PH, BONES.com. And from there you can contact me, get onto my social media, etc. So if anybody, and I will have conversations with people for free. If you want to chat about it, then there's a link on there. You can book in and have a chat with me if you want to explore it further. There's no hard sell. If you want to explore the work further, we can talk about it. If you don't, that's fine. I'm just here like you to deliver something to people and help them understand the journey I've been on and how amazing it is if you get curious. And that's all I'm pointing to, is just get curious about, is there more? By doing that, we tend to, like you say, look within. And again, I can help people in a few short sessions, like you can, begin to look within and give them tools to do so. So if you want to get into it, by all means do so.
That's it. And I've had multiple soul retrievals over the last 10 years on my own healing journey, and they've been some of the most powerful work I've done. It's important to find the right practitioner, certainly. I know Stephen's got a lot of integrity, a lot of experience in this work. So he's
Thank you.
Check out his website. All right, then. I think we'll leave it for today. We've put the world to rights. We've explored all the dimensions. I don't know if we're going to go anywhere else with this, but powerful conversation. Thank you, Stephen. And I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Yeah.
Thank you, mate.
Thank you very much. Take care. See you soon.
Bye for now.